Hi, I'm Liv, and welcome back to the Book Nook. Hey guys, so what I'm actually going to do for this video, last time I mentioned I was going to do 2 more Norsevember videos. I'm actually going to try and merge the 2 into one, when 2 become 1. Who was seeing Spice Girls in the middle of Norsevember? Not me. So I plan to do one video on sort of reading the runes and another video on sort of accessibility to Viking history, but I'm going to kind of merge them into one because when I was planning the video, the reading of the runes thing kind of morphed into something else, so that's what we're going with. I'm going to try and cram it into one and we're going to see how this goes. First thing I want to talk about is the meaning of the word rune. At the moment, if you Google anything to do with runes and the Vikings, you will usually get kind of more esoteric aimed pages, and they will talk about the meaning of the word rune in modern English as coming from the Norse word runa, which would mean sort of secret lore, mysteries, that sort of thing, leaning on the more magic-y side of things. Now that's not entirely incorrect, and Jackson Crawford does a much better video explaining the kind of etymology of the word rune, but the short version is that way back when some dude translated the Bible from Greek into Gothic and he used the word runa to mean counsel or counsel, both meanings of the word, plan or mystery. It wasn't used in terms of writing. Around about the same time in Norway, somebody used the word runo on a big ass runestone, and that was used to describe the actual runestone itself. So not individual letters or writing, but the whole big ass runestone. By the time we get to Old Norse, it has become runar, which is the plural of rune, which is not really used in the singular very much. It is more used as runa to describe the individual letters themselves. But even in Old Norse, it would have kind of like a residual meaning of like secrets and whispers coming from the Gothic runa, translated from the Greek, and there's kind of a tie in there that if you've got a council of people meeting in secret and talking about knowledge and things, maybe there would be a kind of secrecy around knowledge, so it kind of works. In Old Norse, there's also runi and runa, which are the masculine and feminine, are sort of intimate confidants, so again, that kind of secrecy around knowledge kind of baked into the word. But other West Germanic languages kind of split as to whether it meant this kind of secrets and mysteries thing or whether it actually meant just straight up letters. So if you're reading something that says the word rune comes from an Old Norse meaning of secrets and lore and mysteries and things like that, it's kind of right, but it's also kind of wrong, and just beware that you're not reading a fully kind of esoteric meaning of the word rune and going into all of that side of things when the etymology of the word is kind of split and there's lots of debate, and basically we don't really know. So even the meaning of the word rune in modern English kind of feeds into this whole debate as to whether you buy into the kind of esoteric and more magic-y side of things or the etymology and the historical side of things, which is kind of what I'm going to talk about in this video. But the main thing to take away about runes in the form that we're going to be talking about is they are an alphabet used before our Roman alphabet, and it's a writing system, not a language itself. So there are a series of marks denoting letters, and you can technically write any language in Runic, but if you're going for something Viking, you would be writing it in Old Norse. In terms of the Vikings and Old Norse, there are 2 main runic alphabets that you will see. The first is the Elder Futhark. Now this was developed around about sort of 2nd century, possibly after some contact with some Greek writing and simplifying the languages, the letters themselves, to make them easier to carve into stone and wood. It's the oldest form of runic alphabet we know, consisting of 24 letters, and we think was used from around about the 2nd up to the 8th century. Now the names of the runes themselves were never actually written down anywhere. They've had to be reconstructed from Younger Futhark, Anglo-Saxon Futhark, Old English languages as well. From the things that we know, they've had to be reconstructed. In terms of mass market media and things in games and tattoos and things, the Elder Futhark is the one that you will probably see more, but we're going to kind of talk about why that's wrong. Now in the 8th century in Scandinavia, the Younger Futhark was developed. Now this reduced the 24 letters of the Elder Futhark down to 16 letters. We're not quite sure why, we don't know why some of the letters ended up doubling up vowel sounds, but that is what happened. At the same time in England, they actually increased that runic alphabet up to sort of 30 letters, which is the Anglo-Saxon or Anglo-Frisian Futhark, which I'm not really going to be talking about, but is there. And then later on in Scandinavia, around 1000 AD, that runic alphabet was actually then decreased to the same number of letters as the Roman alphabet, and that's what we would call medieval runes. Both Younger Futhark and Futhark have these rune poems, which are giving the names of the runes and kind of little ditties to remember them, sort of like little mini couplets, and some of them are really cool. Now the main thing to know is that pretty much all runic inscriptions we have from the Viking era, all of these big rune stones or artifacts that have been found, those inscriptions are in Younger Futhark, not Elder Futhark. The Elder Futhark is way older, it's way earlier in the development of kind of language as well as the tools to inscribe them, so it wasn't really used very much, or if it was used to make inscriptions, it was probably inscribed on wood, and most of those things have degraded and disappeared, so we don't have them anymore. But as I say, modern usage of the runes, things that you will see in games, often in tattoo designs and TV shows and things like that, kind of leans on Elder Futhark. despite it not really being used as a written alphabet in the Viking era, it's kind of got this visual mystique as being very Viking. Now I think possibly because it sounds cooler and older, sort of elder Futhok, it sounds more ancient and cooler, and plus the fact that there's 24 letters in the Elder Futhok as opposed to 16 brings it sort of more comparable with our Roman alphabet, so it's easier to sort of transliterate and see across the two alphabets similarities, so that's probably part of it. But because, as I say, most of the inscriptions we have from Viking era are in Younger Futhok, this kind of use of the Elder Futhok kind of causes a bit of a split in sort of rune enthusiasts, or rune enthusiasts, as I'm definitely going to keep calling them now. Actually, I'd say there's kind of more than one split. I'd say there's three kind of camps when it comes to runes. The first one is you've got the camp that says, I don't really care what they mean, they just look cool. And they do. Like, undoubtedly, the runes in Elder Futhok and in Younger Futhok, they look really cool. Like, I think they do, enough that I got two little wooden cups and I've wood burned both of the Futhok alphabets. Come on, focus. Come on, camera. There you go. Burnt both of the Futhok alphabets into a wooden cup, covered it in beeswax and finished it off. Then the second camp would be the one that kind of sees all these runes as this mysteric and esoteric thing. They are the ones that think, yep, they are magical, they have meaning, Saidar magic was totally real and totally bought into by all the Vikings, and that's the meaning I'm going with. Then you have the third camp, which is the camp that is there is a scholarly and historical accuracy, there is etymology of all the runes, this is very accurate, there are proper ways of looking at these things, what are you doing, this doesn't make sense, they're not magic, leave it alone. That kind of camp. And I think there's kind of room for all three camps, and I guess kind of the crux of this video is talking about who has the right to access all this stuff and what is the right way to look at it. So the first camp, they're going to buzz around anything historical, anything that kind of looks cool. If you look at any kind of history, people go for the stuff that looks cool. That just happens. And the second camp, as I say, if you look at sort of TV shows and games, or even if you just Google Viking runes, you will usually get this kind of neo-pagan, neo-heathen, witchy, esoteric, magic-y kind of vibe. It'll take you to pages about how you can carve runes or cast runes and make bind runes out of two runes when you smush them together to make a double meaning, and that they all have these kind of magical properties. Now, if you're in that kind of third camp that is more serious about the historical accuracy of things like looking at the runes, you're going to be looking at that and thinking this is all bullshit and hogwash. Apparently there is very little kind of archaeological and historical evidence that the runes were used in this manner in the Viking era, and it's more likely that this kind of usage of the runes as sort of, you know, carving them into bones and fortune telling and all of that was more of a later medieval thing, perhaps when the Futhok alphabets were not being used anymore because we'd gone over to the Roman alphabet. They kind of got this mystique about them and they looked magical, so were kind of used in that way then. And I'm mostly kind of in the historical accuracy camp, but I personally find it hard to believe that a Norse or Viking society whose religion had an origin story of one of their main dudes, Odin, hanging himself from Yggdrasil, the world tree, this tree that encompassed all the 9 worlds of this belief system. He hangs himself from this tree in order to gain the wisdom of the runes. Wouldn't develop some kind of mystique around these runes themselves. That the Vikings wouldn't then ascribe meaning to them, wouldn't think that carving this rune means healing or carving that rune would dull an enemy's blade and things like that. When the Runetal in the Havamal literally says that Odin learns these runes as spells, to believe that they wouldn't kind of ascribe any kind of witchy meaning to the runes doesn't stack with me. Like, even the fact that the names of the Elder Futhok runes were not written down anywhere, you could read a more esoteric reading into that only Odin was holy enough and wise enough to know the names of the runes, and that the rest of us mere mortals were never going to know the names of them, so they couldn't be written down, they could only be inscribed as the runes themselves, and that knowing the runes was something highly prized by sort of Saidar practitioners and things like that. So I can understand the kind of historical accuracy saying that these runes were never used like that, but it doesn't entirely stack with me, and I do understand why this more kind of esoteric belief in the runes as magic would have developed. But I do totally understand that for those whose primary interest in the runes is as a historical kind of writing system, will find it really frustrating that if you Google Viking runes or just try and research Viking runes, it's just going to come up with this stuff of, oh, magic-y runes. I totally get that's frustrating. And for me, this whole thing around the runes kind of falls under the umbrella of, I've been struggling sort of how to describe it. It's not quite gatekeeping, but I guess where is the line between education and enthusiasm for these things, and when does it become kind of exclusionary dude bro gatekeeping and sort of you've got it all wrong and you're an idiot for not reading the right meanings into these things. For an example, on Reddit there is a subreddit called Norse, which is a really great kind of resource if you want to find out more about sort of Norse mythology and Norse history and Viking history and all of that sort of thing. But every month they put up a sticky thread where people can come and ask for translations of the runes, usually for tattoos. Now I want to caveat by saying that in the main, most of the responses to these requests are really balanced, and will highlight the fact that, okay, you're asking for this translation, but did you know that it wouldn't have actually been in Elder Futhark, it would have been in Younger Futhark, and actually do you want to transliterate, for writing from one alphabet system in another, or would you like to translate this into Old Norse and then into the runes into Younger Futhark? That would be more historically accurate. What are you looking for here? So the majority of the comments are quite balanced, but in that thread every month there will always be somebody kind of kicking off and getting really angry that people are coming into this thread asking for the wrong thing. And I kind of feel like if you're putting up that sticky thread every month and you're opening it up to anybody to come in, you can't be surprised if people don't know the right information, and you can't get your knickers in a twist about it and be dude bro exclusionary gatekeepy, because that's just not fair. When you think about the energy that's kind of given to education and enthusiasm for these kind of lost histories and things, isn't it better that there's the enthusiasm there about any of these kind of runes, even if it's not hyper realistic? Isn't it better that it's there at all? It's a similar thing, not just in terms of the runes, but when it comes to other Viking symbology, things like the Aegirskjelma or the Vegvisir, which again, I will link to Jackson Crawford's videos on these. They are more falling under the province of kind of these esoteric post-Viking, medieval kind of symbology thing, but they are often purported to be Viking symbols. I know it frustrates people who are really into the kind of more scholarly history of the Vikings when people say, oh, look at my cool Viking tattoo, and they're there sat there going, it's not a Viking tattoo! But is it okay to just kind of let that slide and use it as an opportunity to teach people more about Viking history and Norse history, but not be a dick about it? Now, if we look at the Vegvisir, for example, which I will put here, this is often purported to be a Viking compass symbol that will always lead you home, or you will never get lost if you have it about your person, whether that's tattooed on your skin or carved into some kind of emblem, amulet type thing, that is what that will do for you. Now, from a scholarly point of view, total and utter bullshit. Not a Viking symbol. The first use of it was in a medieval script, and it was in like some kind of grimoire, and it kind of took on this more magic-y, symbolic kind of thing as a compass post-Viking era. It's more of a kind of post-convergence medieval grimoire thing that's steeped in like the convergence of Christianity and paganism and all that jazz, but say the person likes that symbol, they find that symbol and all they see is that it's this compass that will lead you home, never get lost, and they like the meaning that's ascribed to it. Now if they get that tattoo, if they're told gently and kindly like that's not actually a Viking thing, there's room for learning there. It's how you talk about it, I guess. I guess there's an importance in people knowing that what they say is a Viking thing is not actually a Viking thing, but you can still keep the kind of meaning and the symbology behind it and accept that it's not true Viking. Now if you talk to the person who has that Vegvisir tattoo and you tell them it's not actually a Viking thing, they may go, okay, cool, thanks, bye, never mind. Or, and this is gonna potentially sound slightly wanky, that person then could kind of start a journey of learning. They could then look into, say, the Vegvisir and see where it did actually historically come from and go, okay, well I want to find out more about the actual Vikings themselves and embark upon that learning journey. Be it kind of scholarly or casual, and there's a difference, I think, between proper kind of scholarly academic interest in all this stuff and sort of a casual interest and no interest at all. Now they might feel silly for having tattooed something on their skin that then doesn't mean what it actually means, but that is not exactly an exclusive conundrum to Viking or Viking symbols, is it? But if they then do kind of go on to learn more stuff about it, whether it's for 5 minutes or 5 years, has in some way that tattoo, that ascribed meaning to it, not actually become true for them? Has it not, in some wanky and esoteric way, become a kind of compass for them? It has led them to not get lost in knowledge. That's kind of a pretty Odin thing, I'd say. I don't know, I know it sounds pretty wanky, but I guess if any of these runes or Viking symbols have some kind of ascribed meaning to them that lands for a person, is that not okay? If a bind rune that somebody gets tattooed on them wasn't actually ever used by any real Viking to mean, I don't know, cows will prevail against trees, I don't know. Is it not okay that if that means something to them now, they can have it? Does it not keep history alive in some way and keep that conversation going in a healthy and kind of learning way if we just talk about it in the right way? Of course, none of this is even really touching on the fact that a lot of the primarily Elder Futhark runes have kind of been co-opted over the years by far-right neo-Nazi groups. Things like Algiz, Awais, Othala and Sawilo have kind of been co-opted. Their meanings have been taken by these far-right groups to mean disgusting things, and even things like Odin's Raven, Thor's Hammer, the Valknut, which, again, not a true Viking thing in that it was found on some Viking era carvings, but the use of Valknut as meaning Odin's knot or the knot of the slain, that's a kind of medieval post-Viking thing. Anyway, so this more kind of modern historical trend of co-opting these super historical runes to mean something disgusting or nefarious, that can only be combated by proper education, refuting the idea that these runes would have historically meant this thing that these far-right groups say they mean. That can only be combated by proper education, and I guess in that sense you have to then divorce from the more esoteric meaning in order to say, no, it don't mean that shit that you're saying it means. So it's a tricky thing to kind of solve, and I realise that even attempting to think about solving it in one YouTube video is way beyond me, or anybody else for that matter. But I just thought it was a really interesting thing to talk about, coming off the back of the Norse runes, the Elder Futhark, the Younger Futhark, what has happened to them, how they are perceived now, and I just thought it was interesting. And I think as a kind of video to end Norsevember on, the kind of overarching theme that I've been getting at in this video of, I guess, just being open and curious, and it doesn't just apply to Viking or Norse history, it applies to all history. If you're open and curious and you don't just take one person's word as gospel, if you find out a meaning to a rune or a Viking symbol, don't just take that first source as the word, that's what it means. Look into it more research. Agreement across sources or confirmation through sources is a really handy tool. But also be open to the fact that that agreement of sources may not even be there. We may not know enough in order to actually kind of answer the questions. Things like the meaning of rune. We don't know enough. There is debate among scholars. There is no definitive answer on what the word rune in modern English means and where it came from. As I say, so much of kind of really, really ancient history does end up being kind of just wild speculation because we weren't there. The kind of historical artifacts haven't necessarily survived. We don't know enough, so we kind of have to guess. But there is a way of approaching any of these kind of histories without being a dick about it. I know that there will be some people who will maybe read some of like the Viking inspired fiction pics that I've mentioned in my last video, and they will read those and get really angry that it's not historically accurate enough. Well, that's why it's fiction. And even some of the non-fiction and the myths, people will get angry about that they're not right. Some sources agree, some sources disagree. Just don't be a dick. I realise this has kind of ended up being a mishmashy, potentially a bit preachy kind of video for my last one for Norsevember, but it's kind of felt natural to me. The Elder Futhark and the Younger Futhark, the Viking Norse runes, are super, super interesting, and as I say, they do look cool. And if you are interested in finding out more about the runes themselves, I will put some links in the description into some resources, both for the kind of more historical, accurate, scholarly representation of the runes, and some to this kind of slightly more esoteric thing. But as I say, the main thing, be open and curious about it, and if you like some of the ascribed meanings to some of the runes and you're thinking about getting a tattoo of them, like, it's crossed my mind, I've thought about it, don't get too hung up on it. Just be aware that like it may not mean what you think it means, but if it means something for you, is that not okay? And that's kind of the whole point of this video, I don't know. So this has all been suitably chaotic, so at least I'm sticking on brand. So that is where I'm going to wrap Norsevember up for this year. I will possibly do it again next year, probably will, and I may continue to do other videos that are kind of Norse related because it's an interest of mine. I found it really fun doing these videos, getting to dig into something that I'm really interested in other than just books. And I hope that you've got something out of some of these videos at least. I don't know. As I say, I really enjoyed doing them. Thank you for watching them. If you are somebody who normally watches my channel and have watched these and not really found anything in them for you, you've probably not got this far in this video, but I promise you, normal programming will be resuming soon. If you've never watched this or any booktube channel before, but you've ended up watching these Norsevember videos, maybe stick around, see if there's something else you like. I am now going to go and buy a Christmas tree because apparently Christmas is happening. So again, thanks very much for watching across Norsevember. I've had a ball, hope you've enjoyed it too, and I will see you next time for some kind of bullshit coming out my face. Bye bye!